If she's not interested, you'll notice these 5 signs instantly. Psychology tricks. The hardest truth in love is this: people don't leave loudly. They leave when you stop being chosen. Most men misunderstand rejection. They imagine it comes with a conversation, an explanation, maybe even closure, but that's not how it usually happens. When a woman loses interest, she doesn't announce it. She doesn't sit you down. She doesn't say, "I'm done." She simply starts pulling away quietly while you're still texting, still initiating, still believing things are moving forward. Her tone changes, the warmth fades, replies get shorter, slower, less personal. And without realizing it, you're no longer someone she's choosing. You're someone she's keeping around, not out of desire, but convenience. Here's what most men never notice: they don't lose a woman because of one big mistake. They lose her because they miss the exact moment her interest died. And by the time they finally feel it, the decision was already made. The uncomfortable truth is this: women reveal their level of interest very early, not through promises or words, but through behavior. If you don't know how to read those signals, you end up investing time, emotion, and effort where respect has already faded. If you do know how to read them, you stop chasing confusion and start protecting your self-worth. Women aren't complicated, they're consistent. What confuses men is that they listen to words while ignoring patterns. Many men grow up believing a simple rule: if she's not interested, she'll tell you. That belief feels fair, but it's wrong. Most women don't reject with words. They reject with distance, slowly, politely, without ever closing the door completely. And this is where men lose their power, waiting for clarity that was already shown through action. Why does this happen? Because saying no has a cost. It creates discomfort. It risks confrontation. So instead of shutting the door, many women leave it slightly open. Not because they want you, but because keeping options costs them nothing. A little attention, a little validation, no conflict. From the outside, this looks confusing. From the inside, it's very consistent. In this breakdown, you'll learn 5 instant signs that reveal when a woman isn't interested, so you're never left guessing, overthinking, or chasing false hope. Each sign shows you exactly where you stand in her mind. And once you see it, you can stop wasting emotional energy and start choosing yourself. Because clarity isn't about controlling women. It's about respecting yourself enough to walk away when you're no longer being chosen. Behavior is the truth language. Behavior is the only language that never lies, and this is exactly why so many men stay far longer than they should, long after the answer has already been given. Instead of reading what is happening, they keep explaining, keep adjusting, keep offering more time, more patience, more emotional energy, believing that effort will somehow convert uncertainty into attraction. But attraction does not grow through negotiation. It does not respond to persuasion. And it never rewards someone for ignoring reality. That misunderstanding is rooted deeply in male hope, not in female psychology. When genuine interest is alive, it expresses itself effortlessly through attention that feels warm instead of forced, through communication that feels easy instead of heavy, through investment that flows naturally instead of being rationed. And when interest fades, it rarely announces itself clearly or dramatically. It simply retreats in small, almost polite ways that can be explained away if you want to keep believing. Shorter replies, delayed responses, fewer questions, less curiosity, less emotional presence. The danger is not that these signs are invisible. The danger is that men talk themselves out of seeing them, using psychology tricks against themselves, convincing themselves that patience equals strength or that persistence equals value, when in reality, strength begins with perception, not endurance. Don't argue with what is being shown to you. Be alert. That is the line most men cross without realizing it, because once you start debating reality instead of observing it, you give away your leverage. And leverage is not about control, it is about clarity. Power never comes from forcing someone to explain feelings they are comfortable keeping vague. Power comes from recognizing patterns early, before emotional investment quietly turns into emotional debt, before you start chasing reassurance instead of connection. This is where mature men separate themselves from frustrated men. The strongest men are not waiting to be chosen. They are watching whether they are being chosen at all, calmly, without resentment, without drama, without self-deception. You must understand this. Words are cheap. Words are flexible. Words can soothe guilt or maintain comfort. But behavior costs something. Time costs something. Effort costs something. People do not spend those currencies on what they do not value. So stop expecting honesty to arrive wrapped in perfect sentences and start noticing how honesty is already speaking everywhere else, in how she looks at you when you talk, in how present she is when you share something meaningful, in whether she creates space for you in her life or keeps you neatly contained on the edges. Once you learn to trust behavior over hope, something important shifts inside you because you stop chasing explanations, you stop performing for approval, you stop auditioning for affection that has already moved on. That alone changes everything, not because you become colder, but because you become clearer. Don't confuse effort with progress. Be honest with yourself. That is where understanding female psychology actually empowers you instead of confusing you. Because attraction is responsive. It either grows with ease or it doesn't. No amount of clever conversation, no amount of generosity, no amount of strategic patience will manufacture desire where it no longer exists. This is not pessimism. This is realism, the kind that frees you instead of trapping you. You must also see how men sabotage themselves by clinging to potential instead of pattern, by falling in love with what could be instead of accepting what is. This is where how to fall in love becomes less about pursuit and more about discernment, because love that is healthy never requires you to ignore your intuition or override repeated signals just to keep it alive. Be steady. Be observant. Don't personalize withdrawal as a failure, because disinterest is not a verdict on your worth. It is simply information. And information is only painful when you refuse to accept it. The moment you stop reacting emotionally to mixed signals and start reading them strategically, you reclaim your self-respect. And self-respect is what keeps attraction possible in the first place, because people respond to those who respect their own time and energy. Psychology tricks are useful only when they are used to sharpen awareness, not when they are used to prolong fantasy. The men who truly understand psychology tricks know that the most effective one is restraint, knowing when to pause, when to step back, when to let silence reveal what words never will. Don't chase clarity from someone who benefits from confusion. Be decisive. That is the quiet confidence women notice even when they don't articulate it, because clarity feels safe and uncertainty feels heavy. No one falls in love inside emotional fog. If you want to understand female psychology, stop asking why she is pulling away and start observing how she already has. And if you want to know how to fall in love without losing yourself, learn this one rule deeply. Interest that must be chased is interest that is already leaving. That is not bitterness. That is wisdom earned through attention. When you stop forcing outcomes and start respecting signals, you stop accumulating emotional debt, and you begin making choices from strength instead of hope. From that place, whether she stays or goes no longer defines you, because you are no longer reacting, you are responding. You are no longer waiting, you are deciding. And that shift, quiet as it is the difference between men who feel stuck in dating and men who move forward with calm certainty, grounded in reality, fluent in behavior, and finally aligned with how attraction truly works. Number 1, her eyes are already leaving. This is the first place the truth shows itself, long before words ever catch up, and it's the place most men overlook because they're listening too hard instead of watching closely. Before a woman pulls away with explanations, excuses, or polite distance, she pulls away with attention. And attention always reveals itself through the eyes first. That is not poetry. That is human behavior. When a woman is genuinely interested, her focus settles without effort. Her gaze stays with you, not because she is being polite, not because she is performing interest, but because in that moment, nothing else in the room feels more relevant than the man in front of her. Her eyes don't wander because they don't need to. They have already landed. That is what presence looks like. That is what attraction looks like when it is alive. But when interest drops, the change is immediate, even if it is quiet. Her eyes stop landing and start scanning. They no longer rest. They search. She looks past you instead of at you, over your shoulder, toward the door, toward movement, toward possibility. Her attention fractures, and once you know what to look for, it is no longer subtle. The eyes don't linger. They dart. They disengage. They move the way someone moves when their body is present, but their mind has already left the room, because that is exactly what has happened. She is already somewhere else mentally, weighing options, imagining alternatives, comparing energy. Don't deny this. Be honest. The eyes always go where interest still lives. Men misread this moment more than any other. They tell themselves comforting stories. They assume distraction means nerves. They assume shyness. They assume boredom that can be fixed with better conversation, better jokes, better effort. So they talk more. They explain more. They lean forward emotionally while she is leaning away mentally. And that is the mistake, a costly one. Because a woman does not look away when she is deciding how to connect with you. She looks away when she is deciding what else might be better. That is a hard sentence, but it is a clean one. And clean truth is easier to work with than comforting illusion. Once you stop ignoring this signal, you see it everywhere. At a bar, she glances around every time someone walks in, even when you are mid-sentence. At a coffee shop, her phone comes out halfway through your conversation, not because it rang, not because there was an emergency, but because her interest quietly did. During texting, she leaves your message unread for hours, while remaining active everywhere else. That is not busyness. That is priority. Don't argue with it. Don't explain it away. Be precise. People make time and attention for what they value. Everyone does, including her. Here is the part most men resist, especially men who see themselves as patient, understanding, or emotionally intelligent. Women look at what they are still considering, always. When she is interested, her eyes naturally come back to you, again and again, without effort. When they don't, it is because she is already evaluating other options. Not angrily, not maliciously, just realistically. And the more you push when her eyes are elsewhere, the more your value drops in that moment. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because attention cannot be negotiated. It does not respond to pressure. It responds to presence. And presence disappears the moment you start chasing it. Don't compete harder when her attention wanders. Notice faster. That is the move. Be still enough to read the room. Be grounded enough to stop performing. When you pull your energy back instead of chasing her attention, something important shifts. You stop feeding an interaction that is already losing momentum. You stop auditioning for interest that is no longer focused on you. And suddenly, the dynamic changes. Not because you demanded anything, not because you confronted her, but because you removed what was being taken for granted. This is where a high-value man separates himself without saying a word. A high-value man does not panic when attention wavers. He observes. He does not raise his voice metaphorically or emotionally. He lowers his investment. Calmly, cleanly. That restraint is not indifference. It is self-respect. And self-respect is felt immediately, even if it is not consciously acknowledged. When you stop chasing wandering eyes, your presence becomes heavier, not lighter. You become noticeable precisely because you are no longer trying to be seen. That is how you attract women without manipulation, not through tricks, not through constant effort, but through consistency of self. This is masculine energy in its most misunderstood form. Masculine energy is not force, it is stability. It is not pressure, it is patience without attachment. When you pull back instead of pushing forward, you allow reality to reveal itself fully. Either her interest recalibrates and returns, or it disappears completely. And either outcome is a win because you are no longer lying to yourself. Don't confuse attention with validation. Be clear. A woman's eyes tell you where you stand long before her words ever do. If she is present, you feel it. If she is drifting, you see it. And the moment you stop chasing drifting attention, you reclaim your position. Not as a performer, but as a man with options, standards, and boundaries. That is what defines a high-value man, whether he is 35 or 70. Age does not create value, awareness does. Many men believe they must work harder to keep interest alive. That belief keeps them stuck. Attraction is not maintained through effort alone. It is maintained through polarity, space, and grounded presence. When you keep talking while her eyes are leaving, you collapse that polarity. When you pause, when you slow down, when you stop trying to rescue the moment, you allow space to do what force never can. Sometimes that space pulls her back. Sometimes it reveals that she was already gone. Both outcomes protect your dignity. Be observant. Be composed. Don't rush to fill silence. Silence is information. When you allow it, you gain clarity. That clarity is what allows you to attract women who are genuinely aligned with you, not just temporarily entertained. This is how masculine energy stabilizes interactions instead of chasing them. This is how you stop burning energy on people who are already halfway out the door. A man who understands this does not become colder. He becomes cleaner in his decisions. He does not resent wandering attention. He responds to it appropriately. He adjusts his investment to match reality. That is not withdrawal. That is alignment. And alignment is what makes a man unmistakably grounded. This is why a high-value man does not need to demand attention. His absence speaks louder than his pursuit ever could. So don't argue with wandering eyes. Don't explain them away. Don't compete with the room, the phone, or the possibilities in her mind. Be present. Be aware. Be willing to step back. When you do, you protect your masculine energy instead of leaking it. And that energy, when it is calm and self-directed, is exactly what continues to attract women who are capable of meeting you where you stand. That is the truth her eyes have been telling you all along. If this hit home, don't ignore it. Act on it. Drop a comment right now and write, "I notice the signs, and I choose clarity over chasing." Like the video, subscribe for more real psychology tricks, and remind yourself daily, attention never lies. Only effort wasted on the wrong place does. Number 2, her voice loses emotional color. When a woman's interest begins to fade, the earliest and most reliable signal is not what she says, but how she sounds, because the voice is the nervous system speaking out loud, and men with experience learn to trust tone over explanation every single time, especially in modern life where words are cheap, edited, and filtered, but energy cannot be faked for long. When attraction is alive, her voice carries color, movement, rhythm, warmth. It rises and falls naturally, speeds up when she's engaged, softens when she feels comfortable, and there is an ease to it that feels effortless because genuine interest creates emotional energy, and emotional energy always reshapes tone. This has been true across centuries, long before smartphones and messaging apps, because human psychology does not evolve as fast as technology, which is why Old Stoic wisdom still applies with brutal accuracy today. When that interest drains away, the shift is unmistakable if you are willing to see it. Her voice flattens, responses shorten, enthusiasm evaporates, not dramatically, not with conflict, but with neutrality. A calm emptiness that many men mistake for stress or fatigue because they want reassurance more than truth. Yet the contrast reveals everything. She can be animated with friends, expressive about topics that excite her, alive when engaged in something meaningful, and then suddenly distant and colorless when interacting with you. That difference is not random. It is selective disengagement, a quiet withdrawal of emotional investment that requires no announcement. As Carl Jung observed, what you resist persists, meaning the more you argue with reality, the longer you stay trapped inside confusion. Texting follows the exact same pattern because digital communication amplifies emotional intent. When interest is present, messages have rhythm, timing feels natural, words expand, emojis appear organically, conversations flow. When interest fades, communication is stripped down to the minimum, delayed replies without explanation, short answers that feel obligatory, exchanges that feel hollow rather than connected. This is where most men sabotage themselves by trying harder, adding enthusiasm, sending longer messages, compensating for her lack of energy with excessive effort, believing that more input will revive attraction, when in reality, attraction is not revived through pressure, but through polarity, space, and self-control. This is where Stoicism win becomes a lived principle rather than a concept, because the man who understands emotional dynamics does not chase energy that is not being offered. He regulates himself instead. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, and disciplined men understand that clarity beats hope, observation beats imagination, and restraint beats reaction, especially in relationships where imbalance grows quickly if unchecked. When you stop rewarding low emotional energy with high effort, you shift the dynamic without confrontation, without argument, without needing validation, because silence and composure communicate boundaries more powerfully than explanations ever could. This does not mean playing games. It means refusing to carry an interaction alone, refusing to perform for attention, refusing to negotiate interest, which in modern life is one of the most important skills a man can develop because attention has become currency and self-respect has become rare. When you withdraw calmly, one of two things happens. Either her genuine interest resurfaces because space restores polarity, or the absence confirms that the interest was already gone. Both outcomes protect you, both save time, both preserve dignity. This is victory, not loss, because the man who understands himself is never defeated by clarity. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And this is where iron mind discipline separates men who drift from men who lead their own lives, because emotional self-control is not coldness, it is strength. It is the ability to remain grounded while others fluctuate, to observe without panic, to step back without resentment. In a world driven by instant gratification and constant stimulation, this discipline becomes a competitive advantage, not only in dating, but in career, health, and personal growth. Many men between 35 and 70 look back and realize how much energy they wasted chasing unclear signals, negotiating interest, explaining themselves to people who had already disengaged. This awareness, when adopted now, changes the trajectory forward because you stop trying to convince and start choosing. You stop performing and start evaluating. You stop asking, "How do I get her attention?" and start asking, "Is this interaction worthy of my time?" That mental shift alone reshapes your presence. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how, and your why here is self-respect. Your how is composure, patience, and decisiveness, because a man grounded in old Stoic wisdom does not beg for enthusiasm. He expects mutual energy, or he walks away peacefully, and this expectation is felt even when unspoken. In modern dating culture, where communication is constant yet depth is rare, the man who does not overreact to emotional shifts becomes memorable, not because he is loud, but because he is steady, and steadiness creates safety, intrigue, and respect, qualities that impulsive behavior destroys. When you embody Stoicism win, you understand that attraction thrives on balance, that emotional imbalance is corrected through restraint, not escalation, and that your value is not proven by persistence, but by discernment, because you choose where to invest, not out of fear of loss, but out of alignment with your standards. The man who develops an iron mind listens to tone, observes patterns, trusts actions over explanations, and responds with calm decisiveness. This approach does not make life smaller. It makes it cleaner, simpler, and more powerful, because confusion drains energy while clarity restores it. Remember this lesson deeply. When her voice loses emotional color, when communication becomes flat and minimal, do not argue with the signal. Do not compensate. Do not chase. Instead, pause. Pull back. Refocus on your own life, your mission, your health, your growth, because attention redirected inward strengthens you outwardly, and people respond to strength even when they don't consciously understand why. Seneca said, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." And many men suffer emotionally not because of rejection, but because they refuse to accept reality early, dragging uncertainty longer than needed, while the disciplined man accepts quickly, adjusts calmly, and moves forward without bitterness. This is mastery. This is modern masculinity refined by ancient philosophy. This is old Stoic wisdom applied to contemporary relationships, reinforced through iron mind habits, and lived through Stoicism win principles. Because the man who can hear truth in silence, who can withdraw without resentment, who can remain centered when interest fades, is the man who wins not only in dating, but in life itself. Number 3, her tone starts placing you beneath her. Number 3 is the one almost no man sees until it's already cost him his position, his clarity, and his self-respect. Because this shift doesn't arrive with drama or explosions, it arrives quietly, wrapped in tone. And the moment her tone starts placing you beneath her, something fundamental has already changed. And that quiet change is far more dangerous than rejection, because rejection is honest, while this is slow erosion. And here's what most men misunderstand from the start. It's not when she leaves that things fall apart. It's not when she pulls away. It's not when she says she's confused or busy or overwhelmed. It's the exact moment you begin giving more to compensate for what she has already stopped giving. That's the pivot. That's the leak. That's where the dynamic quietly tilts against you, because before you can explain it, you feel it. The warmth that once existed is gone. The ease disappear. The flow turns stiff, and instead of stepping back and observing, you lean in. You talk more. You clarify more. You soften your edges. You loosen boundaries you once held naturally. You try to be more patient, more flexible, more accommodating, believing that effort will restore what vanished. But effort applied in the wrong direction doesn't restore attraction. It reverses it. And here is where psychology tricks and female psychology intersect in a way most men were never taught to understand. Because men grow up hearing that persistence is strength, that consistency proves character, that staying the course earns loyalty. But in attraction, persistence in the face of withdrawal doesn't read as commitment. It reads as fear of loss. And the more you explain yourself, the more you negotiate for connection, the more you show that you are invested in an outcome she is already emotionally stepping away from. And right there, without a single argument, without raised voices, without confrontation, your position changes. Because tone is not just sound, tone is hierarchy. Tone communicates status faster than words ever could. And when a woman respects you, her tone carries space, curiosity, softness, openness. There is room for you inside it. She listens, she engages, she invites. But when she no longer fears losing you, that tone tightens. It sharpens slightly, not enough to cause a fight, just enough to test you. She interrupts. She rushes you. She responds with clipped answers. Sighs replace warmth. Impatience replaces interest. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. Just enough edge to see if you will accept being spoken to differently. And most men do exactly that. They brush it off, they excuse it, they rationalize it. They tell themselves she's stressed, tired, busy, overwhelmed, and that rationalization feels noble. But what's actually happening beneath the surface is recalibration. She's testing distance. She's measuring how much she can lower investment while you raise yours. And here's the part that stings if you're honest with yourself. Women don't lower their tone with men they value. They lower it with men they believe will stay regardless. And if you want proof, don't listen to what she says. Observe what she does. Notice how she speaks to someone she wants to impress. Notice the lightness, the attentiveness, the patience. Then notice how she speaks to you. That contrast is information. And it's more honest than reassurance, more honest than explanations, more honest than promises. Because behavior never lies. And the mistake men make at this stage is continuing to invest while their position is being quietly reduced. They reward dismissiveness with patience. They reward emotional distance with understanding. They reward lowered effort with increased availability. And every time they do, the imbalance locks in deeper. Not because she is intentionally trying to harm you, but because dynamics solidify based on what is allowed. And respect does not come from demanding better treatment. It comes from refusing to participate when the standard drops. That is the uncomfortable truth most men resist. because walking away from something you've invested in feels counterintuitive. But silence communicates more than arguments ever will. Pulling back communicates more than pleading ever could. Calm withdrawal sends a message words cannot deliver. This version of me does not get access, and that moment becomes a fork in the road. Either the dynamic corrects itself because respect reawakens, or it ends because it was already gone. And that outcome is not something to fear, because staying where respect has faded costs far more over time. And if you want to understand how to fall in love in a way that doesn't slowly diminish you, you must understand this principle deeply. Attraction is not maintained by proving your value. It is maintained by embodying it. Don't chase shifts you didn't create. Don't negotiate for warmth that used to be freely given. Don't explain yourself into smaller and smaller spaces. Be observant. Be grounded. Be willing to step back without hostility. That is strength. And this is where psychology tricks often get misunderstood, because the goal is not manipulation. The goal is alignment. When your actions match your standards, dynamics reveal themselves clearly. And female psychology responds not to pressure, but to presence, not to pleading, but to certainty, not to overgiving, but to self-respect. And when you stop compensating for someone else's withdrawal, you stop leaking position. You stop reinforcing imbalance, and you finally see the situation as it is, not as you hoped it would be. And that clarity, while uncomfortable at first, is what allows healthier connection to form. Because how to fall in love is not about holding tighter. It's about standing firmly in who you are. And if respect returns, it does so because it was earned through boundaries, not bought through sacrifice. And if it doesn't, you didn't lose anything that was truly aligned with you. You simply stopped paying the cost of staying where your presence was no longer valued. And that is not loss. That is self-preservation. And the men who master this don't become cold. They become clear. They don't withdraw to punish. They withdraw to observe. They don't demand better tone. They require it by not engaging when it disappears. And that is the quiet power no one teaches. The power to step back without resentment, to let behavior speak, to let dynamics resolve themselves honestly. Because in the end, the question you must ask is simple and direct. Why are you still investing where respect has already faded? And if the answer makes you uncomfortable, that discomfort is not your enemy. It's your signal, your guide, your invitation to recalibrate, to realign, and to choose relationships where tone, effort, and presence rise naturally rather than having to be negotiated. Because that is where genuine attraction lives. That is where connection thrives. And that is where understanding psychology tricks, female psychology, and how to fall in love becomes wisdom rather than strategy. If you recognize this shift, you're already more aware than most men. Because most don't notice when respect starts fading. They keep explaining. They keep compensating. They keep investing where the standard has already dropped. Don't do that anymore. If you're ready to stop chasing warmth that disappeared and start honoring your own position, comment this below and let it be your line in the sand. I no longer invest where respect is gone. Number 4, her body is closing, even if her mouth isn't. Number 4 is one of the clearest signs of all, yet it's the one men talk themselves out of the most. Her body is closing, even if her mouth isn't. And this matters because words can be polite, careful, or delayed, but the body doesn't bargain. It responds instantly. A woman can say all the right things and still be telling you no because her body speaks before her mind finishes explaining. When interest is real, the body opens naturally. When interest fades, the body pulls back long before any explanation shows up. That reaction is instinctive, not planned, not strategic, and that's exactly why it's reliable. When a woman is drawn to you, her body aligns with you without effort. Her shoulders turn toward you. Her torso leans in. Her feet point in your direction. Space between you feels easy, unguarded, almost invisible. She doesn't protect herself because she doesn't feel the need to. She's present. She's available. Her body says, "I'm here." And she doesn't have to think about it. That openness is automatic. But when interest shifts, the change is just as automatic and just as honest. Her arms begin to cross. Her legs angle away. Her posture leans back instead of forward. She creates small barriers without realizing it. A drink held between you. A purse repositioned. A slight turn of the shoulders toward the room instead of toward you. These movements are subtle, quiet, easy to dismiss, but biologically, they're precise. Her body is creating distance, not emotionally yet, physically first. Men often ignore these signals because her words haven't changed. She's still polite, still smiling, still saying yeah or sure or maybe, and that politeness becomes the trap. Because politeness keeps men leaning forward when they should be stepping back. Politeness delays rejection, but it never replaces desire. And here's the truth most men miss. Women can say yes out of courtesy. Their bodies never do. Watch how this unfolds in real time. On a date, the first half feels open. Conversation flows. She leans closer. Her movements mirror yours. There's rhythm. Then something shifts. The chair moves back an inch. Her posture closes. She stops matching your movements. That isn't random. That's withdrawal. Not dramatic withdrawal, not final withdrawal, but early withdrawal. And early signals matter more than late explanations. In group settings, the signal becomes even clearer. Instead of angling toward you, she angles toward her friends. She leans into them, not you. Her attention drifts outward. Physical proximity follows interest. Distance follows disengagement. Always. This is not about guessing. It's about observing. Even in texting, this pattern holds. The body still speaks, just digitally. Responses slow down, messages shorten, plans lose shape, specifics turn into maybe. That's physical distance translated into behavior. The same closing expressed through space and time instead of posture. The mistake men make at this stage is pressing forward. They move closer when she moves back. They talk more when she grows quieter. They increase effort when her body is clearly signaling retreat. And every step forward that she didn't invite quietly lowers perceived value. Not because effort is wrong, but because timing matters. Attraction needs space to breathe. When you ignore her need for distance, you don't build connection, you suffocate it. This is where masculine energy is misunderstood. Masculine energy isn't force, it isn't chasing, it isn't insisting. Masculine energy is awareness paired with restraint. It's the ability to notice a shift and respond calmly instead of emotionally. It's the confidence to pause instead of push. The man who notices these signals early doesn't argue with them. He doesn't explain. He doesn't convince. He mirrors the distance. He relaxes back. He stops advancing. And that restraint does something powerful. It restores balance. Because when you stop pursuing someone who is retreating, one of two things happens. Either her interest returns, or it reveals that it was already gone. Both outcomes protect you. This is where a high-value man separates himself from men who chase clarity instead of embodying it. A high-value man doesn't demand closeness. He allows it. He doesn't pursue mixed signals. He observes them. He doesn't try to attract women by filling space. He attracts women by respecting it. Be clear about this. Distance is not rejection, it's information. And information is only useful if you respond correctly. Don't close the space she opens. Don't invade the space she creates. Match her energy calmly. That is not indifference. That is self-respect. Most men fear stepping back because they believe momentum will be lost. But attraction doesn't disappear when you pause. It disappears when you ignore signals. Stepping back is not giving up. It's listening, and listening is strength. You must understand this deeply if you want to attract women without exhausting yourself. Attraction grows when both people feel free to move. When one person presses forward while the other retreats, tension forms. Not the good kind, the kind that drains interest. Notice the simplicity of this. When her body opens, you engage. When it closes, you pause. No arguments, no analysis, no emotional reactions, just alignment. That calm alignment is masculine energy in its cleanest form. This is why men who carry grounded presence don't need tricks. They don't chase signals. They respond to them. They don't try to convince. They allow reality to reveal itself. and reality always does. Don't confuse politeness with desire. Don't confuse access with attraction. Don't confuse effort with value. Be observant. Be still when needed. Be willing to let space do the talking. That silence often says more than words ever could. When you respect her body's signals, you respect yourself, and that respect is felt. Sometimes it reignites interest. Sometimes it ends the interaction quietly. Both outcomes are wins, because you walk away intact. This is how a high-value man moves, calmly, clearly, without pressure, without resentment. He understands that to attract women, he must first remain aligned with himself. He doesn't collapse inward when interest fades. He doesn't chase outward when space appears. He stays centered. That is masculine energy. Not loud, not forceful, just steady. And steady presence is always felt. So remember number 4. Her body tells the truth before her words catch up. Watch it, trust it, respond with restraint, and let attraction either rise naturally or exit cleanly. That is how you protect your time, your energy, and your sense of self. Number 5, zero investment is the loudest rejection. Number 5, zero investment is the loudest rejection. And once you truly understand this, your entire view of relationships sharpens, hardens, and becomes calmer at the same time. Interest is never silent. It is never passive. It never hides behind excuses, and it never asks you to guess. When a woman is genuinely interested, she invests without being asked. She leans in. She asks questions. She adds warmth. She brings energy. She follows up. She remembers details. She participates in the flow of connection because interest creates effort the same way fire creates heat, automatically, naturally, without negotiation. When that effort disappears, when curiosity fades, when engagement drops to the bare minimum, the message is already complete, even if it is never spoken out loud. Yet this is the truth most men fight against the hardest, especially in modern life where distraction is everywhere and clarity feels rare. Instead of real effort, you begin receiving placeholders, short replies that say nothing, delayed responses that stretch hours or days, conversations that loop but never deepen. She answers but never asks. She reacts but never initiates. You carry the interaction while she simply receives it. This is not confusion. This is positioning. Modern dating calls it breadcrumbing, giving just enough attention to keep you available, but never enough to move forward. From a psychological and strategic perspective, the pattern is simple and old as time. She is keeping you warm while remaining open to something she perceives as better. This is where Old Stoic wisdom quietly steps in and reminds you that clarity is peace, and ambiguity is a cost you should never keep paying. Look closely at how this behavior unfolds. You ask thoughtful questions and receive flat answers with no curiosity in return. You suggest plans and hear, maybe, we'll see, or I'll let you know. Specifics vanish. Commitment is postponed. Momentum dies slowly but deliberately. The most revealing detail of all is that she is not absent. She is active, just not with you. She is online. She is posting. She is engaging elsewhere, living her life fully. When men say she is just busy, what they are really doing is protecting themselves from an uncomfortable truth, because admitting that someone is choosing not to invest feels like rejection, and the ego would rather cling to hope than accept reality. Attention that costs nothing has no value. When you continue giving time, validation, emotional energy, and presence to someone who does not match it, you teach them exactly how little effort is required to keep you available. You quietly lower your own value by offering yourself at a discount. People do not respect access that has no conditions, and they do not fear losing what never asks for investment in return. The shift happens when you stop reacting emotionally to silence, when you end conversations instead of dragging them forward, when you stop chasing clarity from someone benefiting from your uncertainty, not as punishment, not as manipulation, but as alignment with your own standards. A man with an iron mind does not beg for effort. He requires mutual investment through his actions alone. He demonstrates it by what he no longer gives away freely. This lesson matters even more today, where modern communication creates false closeness, endless texting, endless scrolling, endless access, but very little real commitment. Men who have lived long enough know that energy is finite, time is irreplaceable, and dignity is built through boundaries, not explanations. You do not control who chooses you, but you fully control who you continue to give access to. When you withdraw your energy calmly, without drama, without speeches, without resentment, you regain leverage over your own life. Strength is not forcing interest. Strength is walking away from indifference. This mindset does not make you cold, it makes you grounded. You stop interpreting low effort as mystery and start recognizing it as information, clear, precise, final information. In doing so, you free yourself to invest in areas that return value: your body, your mission, your craft, your family, your peace, your future. This is how Stoicism win shows up in relationships, not by emotional suppression, but by emotional discipline. You see reality clearly and respond wisely. The moment you stop feeding one-sided connections, you send a message not just to others, but to yourself. You are no longer available for half measures. Wasting time on zero investment is one of the quietest ways men lose momentum in life. So master this lesson deeply. Repeat it until it becomes instinct. No effort means no interest. No initiative means no priority. No investment means no future. When you live by this code, you move differently. You speak less. You observe more. You act decisively. You stop negotiating with silence. You build an iron mind that protects your energy and sharpens your direction. Victory in life is not convincing others to choose you. Victory is choosing yourself when they do not. That is the calm, unshakable power of old Stoic wisdom applied to modern relationships. Repeated again and again through Stoicism win until it becomes who you are. If this message opened your eyes and saved you from wasting energy where it's not returned, support the channel by liking the video. Share it with a brother or friend who needs this reminder. Subscribe for more psychology, dating wisdom, and self-respect principles. Comment to remember and affirm: I only invest where effort is mutual. Write this statement in the comments to lock it into your mindset and show the algorithm you're part of a high-value community. All right, brother, that's it for today. If you made it this far, take a moment and breathe. Nothing here was meant to make you bitter or afraid. It was meant to make you aware. Awareness is power. Here's the honest advice. Stop staying where your effort isn't met. Not out of ego, not to prove anything, but out of self-respect. When interest is real, you won't have to chase it, decode it, or fight for it. You'll feel it in the consistency, the tone, the effort. And when those things fade, the strongest move isn't to push harder. It's to step back calmly and observe. Remember this: pulling back doesn't mean you lose. It means you stop losing yourself. Either she steps up or she steps out, and both outcomes save your time, your energy, and your dignity. If this message helped you see things more clearly, make sure you're subscribed. This channel is for men who choose clarity over confusion and standards over false hope. And if any of these signs felt familiar, be honest with yourself and leave a comment. That's where real change begins. Stay sharp, stay calm, and never stay where you're not valued.